everybody, and welcome to the Silverton Candidate Forum. My name is Kayla Catino. I am the president of Silverton Grange, who is sponsoring this event. Even though we're not at the Grange physically, we typically do have these forums during the primaries and general election at this Grange building that you see behind Lee and myself. So we're bringing the Grange to you in our virtual world. I'll start a little bit, describe the background of, introduce the Grange, and then we'll talk about the agenda for today. So the Grange is a grassroots organization. Granges have been around since 1850s or 1860s. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but grassroots organizations that are focused around agriculture and building community. So really the important aspects of our Grange are there are rituals to our meetings, but most importantly is this community. And so our Silverton Grange, our vision is really to be a community of neighbors. And that's been harder to do in this COVID world, but things that we have been able to do are offering garden plots to neighbors nearby in an underserved community so they can garden and grow and empower them to grow their own food. We have also done classes based around agriculture, like food preservation, low water gardening, and classes like that. Also holding these candidate forums because along with agriculture, the Grange also supports that to individuals to be political citizens, and no matter what their belief is, but the Grange believes in empowering individuals to take a stand and be involved in their community. And if you are interested in those values as well, of course, the Grange, the membership is open to all. So if you're a political person or really like agriculture and you just don't know the venue of kind of to share and build that community, the Grange membership is open to all, and as a grassroots organization, we provide classes based on our members' skills and interest, and also what we can do to really serve our community. And another way to serve our community is being that place for dialogue. This was written in the Grange documents over 150 years ago to really be a place for dialogue, and that's our mission today. That this is a place for candidates to share where they're at, for us citizens to ask questions to our representatives, and it's a place to listen, ask, and be in a dialogue. And we ask that you keep it within this mission. If you do have questions, you can type them into the chat. For ease of access, we're going to keep everybody on mute unless the candidates when they're talking, and that will make sure that we can hear who's talking the best. I will be monitoring the chat. We've got a few questions to start with. Lee Mercer will be moderating the forum today, and he's got a few questions to start with, and we'll start by just asking the candidates to introduce themselves. And why they are best fit for the position that they are running for. I'll be monitoring chat. We'll ask the questions there. Please keep yourself on mute. If we're unsure of your question, we might ask you to unmute yourself if there is some kind of follow-up. As far as timing, we did book this. We advertised 2 to 4. If the discussion is really great, we will keep it that long, but also know that if we're all kind of tired and things die down after an hour and a half, that's okay too. So just think it'll be an hour and a half to 2 hours. We're not going to hold you here if there's no more questions, and we're not going to be strict about that 4 o'clock timeline. So we'll be a little fluid with time, just how the conversation goes. Today, the candidates joining us, I'll start with people running in the state candidates. So we've got Jim Hinsbark, who is running for Senate District 9. Fred Gerard, who he's running against, was unable or declined coming today. And then for state representative, we've got Jamie Morris, or she's our House District 18, and Rick Lewis, who is, she is running against, also was not able to make it today. And then at the county level, we've got our county commissioner, we've got Ashley Carson Cottingham on. Other people running for that position are Danielle Bethel, who we did not hear from to attend today. And then the other person running in that position is William H. Johnson, who was running in a Libertarian Party, and he was going to come, but had a family emergency, so wasn't able to make it. And then again, at the county level, for Marion County Clerk, Danielle Gonzalez joins us. And Bill Burgess did confirm, but I do not see his name here. So once we get started, I'll give him a call, Lee, and just see if he's got the link, and we'll see if we can get him in here. Okay, when you do ask questions, when that time comes in chat, please try to focus your questions either at the state level or the county level, and not to a candidate in particular, so we can give the candidates at the either state level or the county level to answer that question, and we can hear from candidates in those positions. All right, I think that's all the housekeeping I've got. So with that, I'll hand it over to Lee, who's going to get us started.
Good, and it would be good, Kayla and or Lori, if somebody could. I talked to Bill Burgess just a half an hour ago. He has some relatives that have come in from Wyoming, but he intends to be on the call. So if you could text him or call him and make sure he knows we're on, we can get started. Okay, we'll start. In terms of introductions, we want you to introduce yourself, give us a little short bio in 3 minutes, and what your background is that makes you the best candidate. Let's start from the highest state position, which would be state senator, and we'll start with Jim Hinsvark and work our way down, so to speak. So if you want to unmute Jim and give us your 3-minute exposition, it would be great.
Hi, I'm Jim Hinsvark, and my family blew into Oregon right after the Columbus Day storm in 1962. I spent a few years at McKee School down the road, a little one-room school, had 8 grades in it, but not all the grades had kids. So it was a very small experience, but it was an experience that allowed all of the students to learn at their own rate. And that started me going into a lifetime of education. Went to Woodburn High School, Chemeketa Community College in police science. And then when I was 50, I graduated on the same weekend as 2 of my kids from college. And I got a geography degree, a Bachelor of Science. And that helped show my kids how important education always has been to me, and the respect that you need to give people who have that, who have the education and have just life experiences. My parents never really understood why I wanted to be a farmer. I wanted to be a farmer mainly so when I had a family, they would know my parents. I could be busy on the farm, being healthy and doing all that. And I can also stay close to my parents. And then later on in the years, they finally understood that when they were able to play with their grandkids. Later on, one of their last things they wanted to do was to have their final days here on the farm. And that was something else that, being here, I was able to provide that for them. Family is incredibly important. I'm a little off today. I'm a little edgy because my neighbor is cutting down the trees that I played in, the woods that I played in as a kid, that I took my kids out and we played in it. I've walked out there with my grandkids, teaching them about the holes in the trees that birds nest in. And that's kind of the person I am. I am involved with family. I'm involved with friends. education is incredibly important. And as a senator, I will bring the respect that everybody deserves to the Senate and work for everybody in the district. Our district is often poorly represented even by our own Fred, because he won't even show us the respect of being here today. And that's just insane to me. But another thing we'll bring to the Senate is, I'm not a policy wonk kind of guy, but I can look at a policy and I can understand the rules and the effects that it's going to have on the local residents out here, because everything that passed in Salem affects everybody in the state. And the people who are creating those, I'm running out of time, who are creating those laws lose track of how that affects all of us in their fights. Thanks.
Okay, and later on you'll be able to tell us more about your policy wonk ideas. So moving down to the House District 18 representative, Jamie Morrison is the candidate from the Dems. Hi, Jamie. 3 minutes.
3 minutes. All right. Well, I was born in Lakeview, Oregon, 1985. My folks came here in 1987. I don't remember the first house, but the second house we lived in was just down the road, a little farm. And yeah, grew up playing with potato bugs and chickens and all that fun stuff. Didn't have a neighborhood. But yeah, Silverton's been my home. I left, went to Portland, got tired of the concrete jungle and came back. It's where my roots are. So near and dear to my heart. Volunteer at Silver Falls for the Friends of Silver Falls for several years before I got a dog. Yeah, and then I was volunteering at the library up until March, and I'll probably be starting that back up here in the next week or two. Yeah, since from March to last Saturday, I was working 2 jobs, going back and forth between my day job, that's like a disc jockey or desk jockey job, and then working for a farm out in Scotts Mills. Yeah, one of my favorite teachers, well, 2 favorite teachers in Silverton, maybe locals here know them, would be Douglas Jenkins and Donna Barr. From Mr. Jenkins, I learned not only that it was important to make mistakes. He said if we weren't making mistakes, we weren't ever learning. And I also learned the importance of, leading by example. He was probably the first person I ever met who knew about recycling and composting and cared about the environment, but he wasn't preachy. He was the type of person, like if he saw a banana peel in the trash, he'd go in there and reach in with his bare hands and grab it out. And he walked everywhere, and he just led by example. It was he was probably my first role model, and he still is a role model. And Miss Barr, moving back, forward, I guess. Compared to now, it's back. But moving on to 7th grade with Miss Barr, she just changed my life because I had a hard time in Robert Frost, and Miss Barr just basically treated me like a human. She got me like that. She understood me, and she, with her words, was able to be very direct and, say what she thought about me. And I hadn't experienced that. And yeah, so those are my 2 favorite teachers. Yeah, I did swim team, played softball, all sorts of sports. Yeah, I think I'm the best candidate because, well, for one, I'm 35. The median age in Silverton is 38.9. I think the median age, or the mean age in Silverton is 38.9. And I think the mean age of America as a whole is 37. So I'm like right there. I feel like most of the people that are my age don't feel like they're being represented. I don't consider myself a party loyalist. I never have been. I'm too much of a cherry picker. There's too many good ideologies from all around. If take Unitarian and that idea of religious ideologies and transpose that onto political ideologies, and that's basically what I am. I take what I like from the different parties, and I kind of, make my own, conglomerate, amalgam of ideologies.
Amy, I'm sorry, but your time is up.
Thank you.
Good coverage of your background, Jamie. And we're going to continue down the hierarchy of government here in the county of Marion. The next level would be Commissioner, Marion County Commissioner, seat 3, and this would be Ashley Carson Cottingham, who's running for that seat. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Ashley Carson Cottingham. I'm running for Marion County Commissioner. As a small child of around 7 or 8, I remember delivering Meals on Wheels with my grandparents to homebound seniors and people with disabilities in Central Oregon. I remember when people would answer the door to receive what was probably their only meal of the day. And I remember the loneliness in their eyes and the looks on their faces, the gratitude that they had to receive that meal through a government program. I'm a 5th generation Oregonian. My mom grew up on a small farm in Central Oregon, and my grandpa was the first official ag and conservation teacher at Bend High School in the 1950s. And he also brought the FFA program to that high school. My grandma also grew up on a dairy farm on the central coast of Oregon, but she grew up in utter poverty, basically barely surviving on the food that they could grow after her father was killed on a logging road because he had to do logging on the side. My grandparents have always been really important to me. I have a soft spot for seniors because of what I learned for them. And I've also always wanted to help people who are struggling to get out of poverty. I attended U of O as an undergrad in Vermont Law School. I volunteered for a domestic violence hotline in law school where I would take calls from women in the middle of the night. After law school, I moved to Washington, D.C., where I ran a national grassroots advocacy organization called the Older Women's League. We fought for economic justice for women and access to health care. I later went on to work for 2 different U.S. senators. I worked for a moderate Democrat, Herb Cole from Wisconsin, on the Special Committee on Aging. And then I worked for an independent, Bernie Sanders, on the Subcommittee on Primary Health and Aging, where I was his staff director. At that time, no one knew who he was, but now everybody does. On those committees, we work to highlight the issues around elder abuse and elder justice, poverty leading to shorter lifespans. We fought to expand Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and we highlighted the dental crisis in America. We also worked to greatly expand funding for Meals on Wheels programs. Since moving back to Oregon, I have become the mom of 2 young kiddos. You probably saw one of them just come in right before I was speaking. I've served as the director for aging and people with disabilities for this date. That is a very large division with around 1,400 staff statewide and a budget of over $3.4 billion biennially. Now I'm the agency deputy director at the Office of the Long-Term Care Ombudsman, where we advocate for residents of nursing homes and assisted living. I see my time is up. I'm running because I want to change this county and I care about all of the people that live here. Thank you.
Great, Ashley, thank you. And I got it wrong. I thought it was 400 million, your budget. It's 3.4 billion. That's a lot of cash. So let's move on to the next level of county government. And why don't we start with the competitor for the seat, Danielle Gonzalez, who's running for Marion County Clerk.
Thank you so much. So please let me thank you so much for coming on a Sunday afternoon and giving me this opportunity to talk with you today and making a digital candidate forum possible. It really makes it more accessible to people over the long term, so I appreciate that. So yes, my name is Danielle Gonzalez. I'm running for Marion County Clerk. And I had a dear public service mentor, and her name was Jo Carter, and she was a wonderful Air Force wife that really showed me the way in many things in government. And in one time she told me that, she's like, Danielle, you know, the best people belong in government service, not just the leftovers, because the people actually deserve that. And it's something that really stuck with me throughout the years. And I've repeated it to my interns and to the staff members that I've had that have felt the burdens of public service. So as a leader, though, I tend to carry on despite obstacles that stop many people. I've worked with numerous elected officials from both sides of the aisle, and I really know what this truly entails to be a public servant in this way. County clerks are at the very front lines of the democratic process, and we are experiencing a pandemic and experience an epidemic of insecurity. We've got fires, we've got distrust, we've got deliberate attempts to provide disinformation to the electorate. And these nefarious attempts divide and destroy our cohesive sense of the democratic purpose. And so during these fragile times, I think visionary leaders are the ones who we need that truly understand the challenges ahead, and they need to be at the helm, because I believe that the future lies in the hands that those that it serve. I no longer wanted to leave that to chance, and so I'm running for Marion County Clerk. I am unafraid of the work ahead of me because I believe democracy can no longer wait. So a little bit about me. I am a well-seasoned professional. I've been in government service for 15 years. I have a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Texas, Arlington. I do have an MBA from Willamette University here in Salem. And I have 3 kids, well-known kids in the area because they're long distance runners. So they're running everywhere and everybody sees them all the time. I have been married for 23 years to a ridiculously cute husband. His name's Musio, and we've been married for 23 years. And while I am not a native Oregonian, I got here as fast as I could. But I think the experience in other parts of the country has helped me to kind of really fully understand the values of Oregon and why it's so unique. So I'm a nonpartisan public leader, and that is who I have been all of my years. I've done disaster relief with American Red Cross. I led a department change in that community. I've also worked for 2 different members of Congress. Thank you, I see that. I've worked for 2 different members of Congress from 2 different political parties. And I have the great benefit now of working for Marion County in rural communities for economic development purposes. And so I would just encourage you to read up about me on in the Marion County Voters Pamphlet, page 20. And I have a website, www.votedaniellegonzalez.com. Thank you so much.
Great, Danielle. Very good. And now we have the incumbent for the Marion County Clerk, Bill Burgess. And unmute, Bill. Unmute.
Okay, there we go. How's that?
Good.
Is this the 3-minute or 5-minute?
This is 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, great. Hot diggity dog. Well, hi, I'm Bill Burgess, your Marion County Clerk. My wife, Cindy, and I are longtime Salem residents. We have 2 adult children and a 1-year-old granddaughter, who, by the way, just drove in from Wyoming a couple days ago and are staying with us. So if you hear extraneous sounds, you know it's that. And we've got the high chair out here and everything too. And it's turned our world a little bit upside down, but it's a lot of fun. I came to Salem as a Bi-Mart pharmacy manager. And while on the Salem City Council, I went back to college to earn a Master of Public Administration at Lewis and Clark. I've served as the Marion County Clerk for 15 years, administering over 50 elections. I served as president of the Oregon Association of County Clerks. That term just ended in August. In 2019, I earned a public leadership certificate from Pepperdine University. I'm a certified elections registrar administrator through the National Election Center in Auburn University. I serve on the National Election Center's Postal Committee. I helped organize the Oregon 2020 Election Security Symposium in conjunction with the Oregon Secretary of State, the U.S. Justice Department, and the FBI. I organized and hosted a 2-day annual conference for the Oregon Association of County Clerks, held in August via Zoom. Our first Zoom meeting, 2 days of Zoom. That was really quite a bit for people. We still didn't get to do all the things that we normally do, but we were able to bring in national speakers for free with Zoom, so that was nice. As your clerk, I will continue to keep the public's trust in administering safe, fair, and accurate accurate elections, assuring that everyone's voice, their vote, is heard. This includes making it as easy as possible for all to vote. The Marion County Clerk's Office is known for professional customer service. We are innovative and adaptable, as evidenced today dealing with COVID-19, the wildfires, and increased cybersecurity threats, and other social issues that we're dealing with. We have a very able and dedicated team administering all aspects of election administration, including voter registration. I say that because in some states, those are assigned to a different department. We have, we also administer the Board of Property Tax Appeals, issue marriage licenses, preserve historic records, and record mortgages, deeds, and liens to protect owner property rights and interests, and to uphold the capital markets. I enjoy making government work for everybody. I like promoting democracy. I like helping people. I like bettering our community. We are all presently living under the extraordinary amount of stress due to the pandemic and a myriad of other issues. To address these, we need to assure opportunity for all and responsive government that helps everybody, not just the rich and powerful. We need to elect candidates dedicated to decency and creating an environment in which we can all thrive. This means informed voters in a voting system that works, that takes these things. I'm committed to providing the mechanics of democracy, as I've done in the past, to help us as a people determine our destiny. I ask for your vote and your support. Please visit www.electbillburgess.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, so for the next question, we will have 3 minutes, and I'm beginning to realize how long 3 minutes really is, but we'll give you 3 minutes on this first question, and we're going to be starting at the state level again, and we'll start at the Senate and House level. And the question for both Jim and Jamie will be, starting with Jim, if you are elected, what are key issues you see coming before you in the 2021 legislative session, which will impact House District 18, Senate District 9, and what are your priorities? Jim, you want to get started?
Sure. So the priorities coming up have really been changed this year by COVID-19. The breakdown in our systems are becoming evident, and with the lack of budgeting, with the lack of budget that will be coming in, we're going to have to reduce some of our budgets. And in that process, I don't want the less fortunate, the poorer people, I don't want them hurt any more than they've already been hurt. A lot of folks out in the district are still waiting for unemployment checks. And I think that's unconscionable that they have to go so long for something that is so important to them. I think the legislature should have stood up and adjusted the rules, changed some rules, and had Kate sign off on it, but get the money to them and then adjudicate. It's against the law to ask for it if you don't deserve it. But after that, climate change is going to be one of my main focuses. That's one of the main reasons I got into this race. Is I understand that it's my generation that, and either side of my generation, that really didn't pay close enough attention and let the climate change issue blow into what it is. It's affecting every aspect of our lives. And one way that I would like to address that is to set up a program that is funded by people's utility bills, but create a program that takes local labor to create and design and install solar panels for residents, have them redirect their previous bills to pay off that system, and eventually within several years, that system will be theirs and there will be more money in their pockets. And they will have a sense of security that won't be ripped down by these winds that are coming down the canyons and starting fires. But the whole process here is built on trust, and we have to be able to trust each other as legislators to do anything. And the way the process is broken down it is so sad. It is just a stain on the democracy of Oregon. Yeah, that is pretty much are the main ones, but we're going to have to be dealing with a lot of infrastructure. We're going to have to getting broadband out into the local communities, into the rural communities. So educational opportunities, especially in COVID, are more easily available to students. There we go. Jobs are coming that way through the broadband, and that's how we're going to have to do it.
Okay, good, Jim. And Jamie, your priorities, what do you see happening in the legislative session in 2021?
All right. Well, I will yield the investigation into the Oregon employment offices to the Secretary of State, because my understanding is auditing of state agencies falls under the Secretary of State's purview. But that is a great concern of mine as well. Basically, my interest would be voting rights and reform, campaign finance laws, climate change, addressing climate change, and I'd like to address a few things in the criminal justice system. Let's start at voting rights and reform. There's not much I would like to change in Oregon because I think Oregon has it good. But what I would like to see is I would like to see incarcerated people be given the chance to vote. It's a disenfranchisement. The only state that allows that is Vermont. And I just don't agree with taking somebody's right away because of solely on a conviction. Partly because if one person is exonerated, that means that there's at least one person who's innocent in jail, which means that they exist. There exists innocent people in jail, so to disenfranchise them further is not right by me. I care very much about criminal justice. The other thing I would be interested in about voting would be to try to lower the voting age. I know that was just attempted and it didn't succeed. I would even take it a little farther to 15. I'd be happy to compromise and go to 16, but my idea behind it is that if these kids are young enough to be considered essential employees in a pandemic, they deserve an opportunity to voice their political voice at the ballot box. Case closed. That's my case. Climate change. I don't mind cap and trade. I don't mind trying it. It should be a transition system. I don't see it as the end all game. If it had an expiration date, and the people, if it wasn't making progress, I say scrap it and do something else. Or, maybe what I've been leaning towards more and more, and this is based off the data in Sweden for the last 30-ish years, is a carbon tax. I like the idea of a carbon tax a little bit more. It just seems to have a more level playing field and less vulnerable to corruption because the state's in charge of these, in the cap and trade bill, the state's in charge of handing out these credits basically, or waivers or whatever they are. And with a carbon tax, it's not like that. It's just a straight across the board carbon. It's going to get taxed, and it would level the playing field. Other things about the environment. Am I getting close? I haven't paid attention. All right. Let's go to criminal justice. I would like to end the cash bail system.
Time is up. Just happened.
You got a good ear for that, Jamie. So, okay, these are the two state level jobs. We're going to go to the county level again, to the county commissioner candidate, Ashley. What are the key issues facing Marion County with which you will be dealing if elected? And what are your priorities?
Great, thank you. So I think the top three issues right now are COVID-19, recovering from the wildfires, and addressing our homelessness crisis. So with COVID-19, it's come into very clear view the role of public health in all the counties. And unfortunately, Marion County is doing very poorly in the midst of this pandemic. So I would want to make sure that all of our public health officials are getting all of the supplies and support that they need to get personal protective equipment out widely across the county to the places that are impacted the hardest. And I believe those to be, folks working in agriculture, our farm workers, and people in long-term care. In my day job, I see the stories and I hear the stories every day of facilities running out of PPE, staff accidentally bringing it in, and then most of the people that I hear about dying, and over half that have died related to COVID, are those living in licensed long-term care settings. And I just think this far into the pandemic, it's unacceptable that we aren't helping these essential workers from bringing this virus in and killing people. I will also model good public health behavior, something I have not seen our current county commissioners do. I see a lot of jokes being made. I see more mask wearing lately, but in the beginning, not so much. With the wildfires, it's critical that we recover up the Santiam Canyon. And so, I will be working very closely with partners in government at all levels. We are not going to be able to handle the recovery all alone or shoulder the entire financial burden of what it's going to take to rebuild. I think we need to invest in infrastructure as we rebuild. And we also have to be really focused, not just on rebuilding, but prioritizing what people who've been impacted need right now. What can we do to get people temporary housing that's not in hotels? What do they need as far as their basic needs being met while we work on plans to recover up the canyon? My understanding is that many, many people that lost their homes lived in mobile homes, may not have insurance. We may be looking at a situation where FEMA is buying a lot of trailers. And so I think we need to be careful and think about how we rebuild these communities. And with homelessness being my third largest priority, I would want to work with leaders across all levels of government. We have not tackled the issue in a way that has made a big impact in many places across the county. So I will work with city leaders, I will work with state legislators, our governor's office, and our federal delegation to ensure that we can have more low barrier shelters, more beds for women and youth. We need a navigation center for resources, somewhere where people can go and get all the info they need to get back on their feet. I think we need to invest also in paying closer attention to the issues that our veterans on the streets are facing with traumatic brain injuries and severe and persistent mental illness.
Thank you, Ashley. Now, says I'm muted. I'm not muted, right? You can hear me? Oh, you can't hear me? You can hear me. Okay, all right. My sign said I was muted. Anyway, we're going to move to the county clerk level again, and maybe we'll switch it up this time. Start with Bill Burgess, the current incumbent. So what are the duties of a county clerk? What is kind of the spectrum of the duties? And then how are you best suited to take on those duties?
Okay, there are a myriad of duties for the county clerk. Of course, what's mostly in the public view today is elections, administering the elections, administering voter registration, taking in candidate filings. In Marion County, we actually developed the ballot, and we had 144 different ballot styles to deal with. In this particular election, the primary election, we had closer to 500 or 600 ballot styles because we had to have one for each party. So certainly elections is one thing. Licensing and recording is another, where we take in we issue marriage licenses, we issue mortgage, not issue, but we record mortgage deeds and liens. That helps the capital markets work, and it also helps protect your private property rights. And that has to be done. Those are permanent records that have to be done just right. We've got an older system that can do that very well, but I'm looking forward to getting that updated when we can. On the list of county priorities, we should be able to do this next fiscal year, which will make some of that faster, especially the marriage license portion of it. We're also, we take in passports. We're a passport acceptance agency. We administer the Board of Property Tax Appeals. We keep the commissioner's records, where we run an archive facility for most all the other departments of the county, where we keep historic records too. And with some of those, we're working at getting those digitized so that they can be accessible, more easily accessible to people in the future. I think that that covers just about. Oh, we're also the ones that we don't really advertise this job, but when the assessor brings the tax rolls, it's my job to certify the tax rolls. Then it's my job to order the treasurer, not the treasurer, the tax collector to go out and collect taxes, even if it means selling people's chattel and all for that. It's not a very highly organized function, but that's one of the things we do. We also swear in different types of people for different positions. I think that's, I'm not sure how much more time I've got, but I think that might be good enough for now. But if anybody's got questions, I'm certainly available to answer them. And you can check the Marion County website. It's got a lot of those things listed there too. The Marion County Clerk's website, but make sure when you're searching to go Marion County Clerk, Oregon, because there are about 30 Marion counties, and sometimes people call us with a lot of erroneous assumptions because they went to the wrong website.
Okay, good, Bill. And Danielle, you want to mention a few of your ideas on the duties of the county clerk and how you would be best suited to do those.
Thank you so much. So yes, Bill covered it really, really well. The clerk's office is kind of broken down into those 5 different divisions: the administrative, the records management, the Board of Property Tax Appeals, licensing, recording, and of course, the one that gets the most attention is the elections. What I have really talked about a lot in a lot of the community forums is that the Marion County Clerk's Office actually touches more constituents than any other department in the county. With over 210,000 active voters, as well as marriage and passport applications and the registration and licensing, all of those things come together in the county clerks actually has a very, very important role in that customer service. But the reason in particular that I think that I am the best suited for these duties is because not just do those duties have to happen, and that's what you have professional staff for, and they do a great job. But with COVID-19 and the recent fires that ripped through the North Stadium Canyon, and then of course the subsequent financial recovery efforts that are going to need to happen, the county will experience a significant strain to its resources. So I work in infrastructure development currently. I work in broadband. I do broadband with the county. I work on I work on infrastructure development in the North Stadium Canyon. I've done that for the last 5 years. And in my work in those areas, I've been able to bring in almost, in the last 5 years since I've been up there, about $20 million worth of grants for them to move forward on large-scale projects. So this is though why I think that I'm the candidate that would best take the clerk's office to the next generation of situations and needs, because it really is going to require some creativity to navigate these resource constraints. I have more than just experience. I have been very successful in nonprofit management as well as government to bring those resources to precisely the place where the impact is the greatest. And I, not to brag, but I have received national awards for my leadership on the national level from American Red Cross. I feel that my compassion and my ability to get things done, especially when the stakes are high, is really what we need moving forward. I know what it takes to accomplish ambitious and important work to serve those people. And I am absolutely undeterred, and I want to make sure that people have a choice in their next leader. So I've led in development, I've led and developed department restructurings, I've done managements of staffs, and I've taken care of volunteers. And I think that I can take the future forward systems thinking approach that I normally do and bring it to everything in the Marion County Clerk's office. So thank you.
Great, Danielle. And we're starting to get some, Sarah Weitzman's come on, and Haviland, Rosie Green, Brian Maddox, and Heather Tonga. Heather has a question up. We're going to do one more round of questions from the dais, and then we'll get to Heather's question. And you can go into the chat and write your questions, and Kayla will be reading them off. So let me go to the next set of questions. We're going to 2 minutes now, but I think this one you can do in a minute and a half. But this will be for the state and state senator rep people. This is for Jamie and Jim, and we'll start with Jamie this time. Historically, both Republican and Democratic legislators have used walking out on the job as a means to block a quorum. What is your opinion of this as a legislative tactic? And if elected, would you pledge to stay on the job? Starting with Jamie.
Yeah, that whole business of walking out on the job, I don't remember from being young. I remember that as being a fairly recent thing. And I take umbrage. It's not how government's supposed to work. Even if they were to forfeit their pay, which would add legitimacy to maybe their protest, it still gums up the rest of the Oregonians. There are other things that have to happen, and to me, I just don't tolerate it, and I would pledge not to ever do that. That's not a means. That's like saying I'm not clever enough to talk it out. That's basically what they're saying. And yeah, so yeah, I would pledge. I certainly would pledge. I would never do that. I would never take that option as a resolution. It's not a resolution.
I thought that was a minute and a half. I thought that was a minute and a half question. Jim? And unmute, Jim. Unmute.
There we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, the whole walkout. Yep, both parties have done it throughout time, and generally it's a bad thing to do. It is a breach of trust in our system, and it cannot be allowed to stand. It just, I mean, that's why I got into this race. That's what pushed me over the top to jumping in, because once again, they're walking out on climate change. The hardest part for me to understand why they did that was because between the last two sessions, there were a lot of negotiations that happened. Negotiations are supposed to be done in good faith, where you're working out your differences, you're helping rural Oregonians versus working with the city folks, and you're doing all that, and you're putting your word on the line. And when it came down to it, they just wanted a photo op, and they walked out again, totally destroying the trust. You know, I would be there to do the people's business, and I would be there until the people's business is done and done right. So yeah, I would never walk out. Less than a minute and a half.
I knew it. Okay, well, let's do a minute and a half question for, this could be 2 minutes. This is a pretty big question for Ashley for the commissioner level. What must Marion County do to improve our wildfire response system and aid in the recovery of the families, businesses, and infrastructure impacted by the recent fires?
Thank you. So I think first we have to figure out what went wrong in this most recent crisis. I think, you know, from a leadership standpoint, we need to engage in what's called an after action activity, where we create a timeline of events. We look at what happened at what points, where we fell short, and we work to fill in those gaps and remedy the shortcomings. I don't believe that it's acceptable to lose any lives in a natural disaster. And I think that could have been remedied with better communication. People driving through flames and embers is not a good way to evacuate in a crisis. And I think we did have lead time enough to be more communicative and protect all of the people living here, especially some of the most vulnerable homebound seniors and people with disabilities. So anything we find in that after action, then we would incorporate that into our continuity of operations plan. That is something that I worked on for the Aging and People with Disabilities program statewide in my previous roles. And then as we look to rebuild structures and homes, I would like to see us have a big emphasis on how we can prevent future loss in forest fires. I think this will not be our last wildfire. And so I think it's wise to invest in, ensuring that we're using the right building materials, we're clearing brush and, wood chip coverings from around homes. We install roofing material that's more flame resistant. We cover gutters, cover vents. Like, there are ways to really better protect your structures. And since we're gonna have to be rebuilding, over 750 homes, I think was the last count, I think it would be smart for us as a county to work with the state and FEMA to make sure that we are using those types of materials. The communities have already been hit so hard. And so I think there's also, I see it, I'll finish in 1 second. We've got to do the sewers while we rebuild. We've got to do broadband. We've got to put power lines underground. Those things will help this area recover economically more than anything over the next 20 years.
Okay, good. Now we'll go on to the county clerk level, and this is a question that may be difficult to do in 2 minutes, and we'll start with Bill and then Danielle. Nationally, there are strong concerns about voter suppression and concerns being expressed about the potential for voter fraud in mail-in ballot systems. Is the Oregon vote-by-mail system safe, and what safeguards are in place to assure that security? Bill and then Danielle.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Let me assure you that vote by mail in Oregon is very safe and secure, especially in a pandemic like this. It's the easiest, most convenient, safest way for people to vote. We have all sorts of security that I couldn't really talk about in just 2 minutes to make this the case, but we have a very robust election management and voter registration system called OCVR, where we can make sure that no matter how many ballots I may send a voter, only one's going to be counted. So that's one thing. Another thing is the signatures. We use the signatures to verify that the person is the person that sent the ballot in, and we have a fail-safe for that, where we actually send the person a letter whose signature we rejected and allow them up to 14 days after the election to cure that particular problem. Those are just two of many other things that we do. There are procedural things we do. We certainly put a lot into security in different ways. We use cameras and alarms and passwords and two-factor authentication in certain instances. Our vote tally system is not on the internet whatsoever, air-gapped completely from the internet. So it makes it really hard for somebody to mess with that system. Some of the things that are more vulnerable are the front-facing things, like, for instance, results that come up on my web page or the county's web page and come up on the state's web page. But if somebody maliciously does something with those, no problem, because we've got all the ballots by paper and we can recount them as many times as we need to get the exact vote. So if you see something funny on election day or any other time that doesn't seem right, give us a call and let us know, and we'll explain what the situation is, and we will certainly get the votes counted properly, every vote.
Okay, and Danielle, your thoughts on the security of the Oregon vote by mail system?
Thank you. I appreciate this question very much. Yes, Bill, it covered it really, really well. That, we have voter suppression concerns in the US, but Oregon has done a great job in making it as simple as possible to vote in the state. But voter suppression, just to explain what it looks like, if you're not really familiar with it, it's the intentional and unintended barriers that voters must overcome to successfully cast their vote in a democracy. I experienced that when I lived in Texas, and so I understand what that looks like. Public trust in our governmental institutions and this polarization that we're experiencing is at the heart of people's concerns. And very honestly, I am at a loss where I hear national figures talking about the intentional or unintended ways that they are finding ways to not count votes. And all that does is lead to disenfranchisement. So the basic tenets of democracy and a healthy democracy are not divisive. The people deserve public leaders that are advocating to make sure that their votes are counted. Systematic disenfranchisement does happen, and it is real, and we see it with the manipulation of hours and rules and all that stuff. Here's the great thing. Oregon's done a really good job in making sure that that is not a concern. But what voter suppression does start with, though, in the state is our census counts. Our census counts undercount minority voices, whether it be rural minority voices or minority racial minorities. We have a legislative redistricting plan that also is done by the current legislators. We could shift to a more citizen elected or a democratically elected group to actually monitor that and to move forward with that. And the equity of opportunity actually starts in the election process very early on with people's access to run for office. And I think that's something that we could improve upon. And we need to make sure that we're spotting what voter suppression looks like. In a mail-in state like this, voter intimidation is really reduced in a mail-in situation, ballot situation. But for some, unfortunately, it's not necessarily where it is in the home, where that intimidation can kind of go unnoticed. So that's one thing I would throw out there. If there are any concerns that people have, the Oregon voters do have a non-emergency number that they can call for if they have concerns with their ballots, and it's 971-673-4111, and that is the Attorney General's office of the state of Oregon, or the Marion County Clerk's office at 503-588-5041. So just to reiterate, yes, we have a safe mail-in ballot approach. It is one of the easiest approaches. It's where we have a difference of voters that vote regularly, and it's been a safe system over the last 10, 15 years. So I'm really happy to be in Oregon to actually experience that.
Good. Okay. So we're going to move over, and Kayla was going to, I think Heather had a question and some other folks from the audience. Again, if you have questions, put them in the chat. And if we run out of audience questions again, we have some more in the queue. But go ahead, Kayla.
I also want to say, if you would like to keep your question anonymous, you can just send it privately to me, and I will keep it anonymous, or you can put it to everyone. Okay, so this is for our candidates at the state level for Jamie and Jim. So one of our participants today, Heather, is a physician assistant, and at her office they're expecting to, and we are expecting to introduce a bill which has to do with modernizing PA practices. So the government is expecting to introduce a bill modernizing physician assistant practice so that our license is not tied to a physician's, but we will continue to have collaborative plans outlining our team practice with physicians and other PAs. Are you familiar with physician's assistants, or PAs, or with the PA bill that started to go through last year and ended when Republicans walked out? So let's go with Jim first.
Yes, I'm familiar with PAs. I see a PA, and he works with the clinic. I have not heard, I know nothing about the bill that was brought up last year or earlier this year that was walked out on. But it makes sense to me that when you are skilled in a position, you should be able to take that education, that authority, that practice, and work with doctors and go forward from there. I see no reason to not do that, especially in some of the rural areas where doctors aren't and PAs will be. So I could see where that would be a very important thing to do.
Great, thank you, Jim. And Jamie.
Hi, yeah, I am familiar with the position of a physician's assistant. We take prescriptions from them all the time in our office. I think they do have to be co-signed by the physician, or like an ordering physician. Like they can do the verbal orders, but we also have to get the signature of the doctor. So it's a complicated mess. And if that bill would be to streamline that so that patients wouldn't have to wait all that long to get the items that they need, then I would fully support that. But I am unfamiliar with the bill Heather is speaking of. I'd have to look it up. I'm not maybe she can ask a follow-up question.
Yeah, Heather, do you want to take yourself off mute and provide more information?
Yeah, I thought I should probably do that. So right now, physician assistants have a our license is under a physician, but our prescriptions, the way they work is our supervising physician's name and DEA number and license number are on the prescriptions. We don't have to have co-signatures.
Okay.
So they're set up automatically that way. And so that happens within the organization when we write prescriptions, or we have to make sure pharmacies have that information. So really the difference is that when, like I've been a PA for over 30 years, and in the practice where I work, I'm the medical director, and there are 2 physicians and a nurse practitioner and myself. And the physicians are both brand new graduates, like they've been in practice for less than a year. And so my supervising physician is somebody who used to work there, but doesn't actually work in my clinic anymore. And so he actually has to come and work in my clinic at least once a month for me to be legally supervised. Where in reality, what I do is I consult with specialists, I consult with other physicians and providers who I need information from when I need to, but I really don't consult with the new grad physicians who I supervise. So it's really an awkward situation for myself. And what the law would do would be to make it so that PAs, as they gain more experience, would be able to outline their collaborative plan to say, okay, this is what I do when I need to get advice, when I need to consult, when I need to refer people, when I need help with a patient, with patient care, and make it more practical to what we actually really do, instead of have it be, right now you have to have 8-hour supervision in person, you have to have the physician on your prescription, even though they really don't see what prescriptions I write 99% of the time. It takes away some of their liability for things that they aren't really even involved with. That's part of it anyway.
Can I talk?
Yeah, well, Jamie, and then Jim, now that you have information, we'll go back to you if you want to share anything else. So yeah, go Jimmy.
Yeah, that sounds pretty familiar. I don't work in a pharmacy. I work in a durable medical equipment provider. And yeah, the electronic signature is often a doctor's name. the way I see some of those regulations, and there are a lot of them, they are actually, they might be well-meaning, but they actually prevent patients from getting what they need in a timely manner. You know, it's like you as a physician assistant will create your plan, your treatment plan. You send the information to my organization or other organizations that need it. Well, and then the insurance company says, no, we know best. We know best. We're going to tell you what you need. So yeah, I would like to get government out of that process. And if it made her job easier, and if it made people get their treatment quicker, which would be better for them in the long run, yeah, I would support that.
Yeah, I think it would be especially helpful in rural areas. And the durable medical equipment, unfortunately, that's a federal problem. And
yeah,
so
that's what I'm very familiar with Medicare.
I don't think it can
Not
be
like
fixed
it.
at the state level.
All right, thank you, Heather and Jamie. Jim, was there anything else you wanted to share with that?
It sounds to me like that bill was something that wanted to basically codify what you're doing and respecting you and your education and your experience for what you've been doing. And I think that's a reasonable ask. So yeah, I would support something like that.
All right, thank you, Jim and Jamie. One other question, so we'll move down to the county level. These were sent in another time, so we'll start with Ashley. You list ending homelessness as an objective. What are some specifics of how you hope to achieve this?
Thank you for that question. I think that the best way to end homelessness is to work across all the different levels of government. So it's not just a city problem or a county problem or a state problem or the, you know, lack of federal resources coming to the state. So I think that I would want to work with city leadership in the cities across Marion County, work with the leaders in our legislature. I've been fortunate enough to be endorsed by President Courtney and the Speaker of the House, Tina Kotek. I have great relationships in the Oregon legislature. And then maximize federal funding too that can come to the county. That's been something that our current Board of Commissioners in some instances has an aversion to applying for federal grant funding for things like permanent supportive housing. So I would want to maximize those resources to get as many people in a dry and warm space as possible. I think that housing is a human right. I think we have done a terrible job here in Marion County in addressing it. The other things that I have experience with are, you know, working with people with traumatic brain injuries. So it's not just that you provide a shelter. You have to work through the person's disability with them to figure out how to keep them permanently housed. Sometimes that requires guardianship. That's a last resort, but it requires more than just here's a place or here's a bed. You have to figure out how to get all of the proper medications in order, the right types of treatment, all of the social support around a person to keep them permanently housed. So I would, you know, work across all those levels of government and use my depth of experience in health and human services to really try to tackle some of the issues that we're seeing. We also know people aren't allowed to go to some of our shelters here in Salem if they are still addicted to drugs or they have a companion pet and those types of things. So we need low barrier shelters so that people can be dry and warm until they can get to a place where they're in treatment and having you know, other opportunities open up to them.
All right,
Thank
great.
you for that question.
Yep, thank you, Ashley. All right, now going to the Marion County Clerk. This is another question that was submitted beforehand. It's what aspect of mail-in voting do you think is most misunderstood both within Oregon and outside of the state? What do you think can be done to correct this? So a little similar to the question last time, but some differences because it's specifically about mail-in voting and how that is misunderstood. And if I remember correctly, Bill went first last time, so I see Lee nodding. All right, so I'm going to go to Danielle first this time. We'll do 2 minutes.
Great, thank you. So I'm in on this one. There we go. So as a person that's lived actually in 3 different states, I lived in New York State, I've lived in Texas, and I've lived here in Oregon. The motor voter effects in 2016, prior to the 2016 election, really did impact the amount of registered voters in Oregon. But not just did it allow for more registered voters, we have a higher rate of voting for under the voting population age. So in Texas, it ranges about 46%. In Oregon, in 2016, it was 70%. We're talking big numbers here, and data matters in these conversations, but the reality is data only matters if you hear a story with it, so it stays with you. And I don't think that we've had enough experience in developing our story in Oregon to actually talk through why it makes sense for their communities. Part of the reason that so many different states are struggling with mail-in ballot right now is because they've never done it before. They didn't set up the initial structures. They didn't do the hard work up front because they don't have the approach that Oregon does. Oregon has the approach of allowing as many people to vote as possible. And so that's something that's really important for these cities and these counties and these states. In Harris County, Texas, you've heard that they've talked about only 1 ballot box to be able to drop in either mail-in or absentee ballots. And of course, that county has millions of people. And so that makes no rational sense. They're setting themselves up for failure by not doing that. And I just truly do not understand why anybody that says that they are really in favor of the Constitution would want to go against that. So I think we need to better craft our stories to make sure that they make sense in their world, not necessarily just in Oregon's world. People are frustrated. I know that it was such a barrier to vote when I lived in Texas, even though they had early voting. You'd have to find the right place to go. And if you were at the wrong place, you'd have to go to another one. And it shifted all the time. And so you got to be a very attentive voter to be able to successfully do it. So if we could just craft, I think, better stories, I think it's a little bit easier for talking points.
All right, thank you, Danielle. Bill, same question. What aspect of mail-in voting do you think is most misunderstood, both within Oregon and outside of the state? And what do you think can be done to correct this?
Sure. But before that, I'm going to say that I know the elections director in Harris County, and I'm sure he's pulling his hair out thinking to have all those many people do that. And in Texas, maybe only 5% of the people vote by mail. Every state does a little bit. It's our absentee balloting, but ratcheting it up to make it for everybody, or at least everybody that wants to, which we should all do, by the way, because citizens should be able to have that right and get that particular service no matter what state they're in. That means getting rid of having to have an excuse to vote by mail and a lot of other things. Certainly, people from some other states have some different ideas about vote by mail. But I've been asked to come speak in different forums. I was in Columbus, Ohio a little bit ago to talk to a national forum on our new motor voter registration and how that affects our vote by mail. Sometimes at conferences, they'll just call on me and I'll have to get up and do a 5 or 10 minute extemporaneous presentation and then have questions after that. So certainly people are interested, and we've had people calling us not too long ago. Virginia Beach, Virginia called us about the ballot drop boxes. But I think one of the most things that people don't always understand is that we count all the votes. You know, some people have an assumption that after the election is decided, we no longer count votes, but we don't certify an election until 20 days after. We give everybody a chance that's had a bad signature issue to cure that. And and only, no matter how many times somebody votes, it's so secure that only one ballot is going to count. I think we've got a lot of things going for that. We're also less likely to give the wrong vote, the wrong ballot to a person in the outgo, which is somewhat problematic at polling places and all, but because of centrally controlled, we don't make the mistakes that are sometimes made in the polling places. I'm sure there's so much more to it, and to your question, there were a couple of other things that I wanted to stress. Oh, some states don't even really look at the signatures on the envelopes, and so that's a problem. Some states, including Texas, instead of looking at the signature, the reference signature, use the signature on the application to vote. Or to get a application to get an absentee ballot. And to me, I think some of those things, and when they hear about how we do it in Oregon, they're more likely to do that, because voting officials throughout the US are very conscientious. Sometimes their Secretary of States and their political machinery and laws that they have to work with get in the way, but most of them are very want to do things right. In Oregon, we're blessed with having a good relationship with our Secretary of State, at least over the 16 years that I've worked there. We try to work as partners in making this work. And if they could see that in other states more and less political in other states, we'd vote by mail would work even better there.
All right, thank you, Bill. Before we go back to the state level, there's a question in chat that I think will be just a fairly quick one to answer since we're talking about this vote by mail. And it is, was there a cost to set up Oregon's vote by mail initially when it was first implemented? So, Bill, you're laughing at that one. Do you wanna speak to that? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, there were costs, but we did it gradually because since the 80s, we had been doing some absentee voting and encouraging people to do more and more and more, to where it got to the time that we were ready to go full vote by mail. It wasn't a big issue. In fact, we were saving money, but not by not running two elections, a polling election and a vote by mail election. But certainly there's some cost, and technology keeps on changing. Technology is expensive. I'm looking at changing out just 17 PCs, and we're looking at it being about $100,000. Luckily, I just got a grant to help pay for that. And but it is an expensive proposition to keep vote by mail or any system working, but it's cheap when you compare it to what it means to legitimacy of government and people trusting that the democratic system is working in America. And we have to uphold the integrity of our system, and to do that takes resources as technology changes, as other things change. Actually, the number of registered voters in Marion County since 2016 up to today have increased quite considerably. I think we were about 150,000 at the beginning of 2016. We did automatic voter registration. We got it up to about 184,000, maybe 182,000. Now we're sitting at 216, almost 217,000 voters. And so handling more ballots takes more technology and ways to do it. And one of the most important things right now you hadn't asked, but is keeping everybody safe because of the pandemic, keeping my staff safe and keeping our voters safe. So we're doing social distancing, and we can't have as many people working, so it takes longer to get things done, but we're going to do it.
All right, thank you, Bill. Yes, Danielle, if you can respond to that as well. There are some other questions that come in. This voting is just a hot topic right now, as I'm sure you guys know. So Danielle, if you want to respond to that question as well.
Yeah. So, you know, some of the other things that and maybe I neglected to say previously, is that the cost is always going to go up. in government and in life, right? That's part of the inevitable scenario. The amount of money that was put into place with developing the mail-in voting, of course, again, Bill covered that. Over time, that's how it goes. But the reality is, if you look at how much it actually costs to run an election where you are in person, that you have staffing costs, that you have set up all of those polling locations, that cost way outdoes what we would cost in a mail-in ballot, which is why it gives us a little bit of flexibility to help with that simplifying of the mail procedures by making sure that there's no postage. That is something that's simplified it, I think, for people that, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even know where a stamp was if I wanted one. So what I would also put in there is that there is questions of whether or not mail-in ballots give a deference to one party or another. The reality is the persons in the military have been doing absentee voting by mail for years. So are we saying now that they're not safe? No, we're not saying that. We're saying that we're taking what works in the current system and expanding it in Oregon. And that's why I say our story is just not as strong as it could be. There's plenty of reasons why people should all vote by mail nationwide. There are lots of steps in between that if we can utilize even blockchain technology to step through all of the different stages of when a ballot is mailed and sent and received and all of that stuff. We're doing that in the fields in a lot of farms for strawberry picking or high value harvest. This is something we could also use. It's not ready yet for mail-in ballots, but it's something that is on the horizon. And I think we need to start planning for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. All right, so we are going to go back to the state level, and Lee has the next question for those folks.
Oh, I do. I can't remember which one it was. Hang
Oh,
on. Yeah.
do you want? I thought you were going to ask it. I can ask it.
No, go ahead. No. Yeah, no, this is the health related question. So, or was this one of the from the audience?
It's about healthcare for all.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so the Oregon legislature passed SB 70 in 2019 to create a task force to design a universal healthcare system in Oregon. This task force is meeting monthly to plan such a system under the leadership of former OHA Director Bruce Goldberg. Where do you stand on the need to create universal healthcare, and what steps do you see us needing to take to get there? And that would be a Jim Hinsvark question, and then a Jamie Morrison question.
Yes, I am in total favor of healthcare for all. I don't think that it should be tied to your job. I don't think it should be tied to anything except being alive. How we get there is, that is the big dispute. It would be so hard just to switch everything over. I'm in favor of a public option, because I think once that option is available and people start using it, there will be a bigger drift toward universal health care. And I think that's probably the easiest way to get there. I don't see, who knows what's going to happen in the Senate and the House with the votes. It would be great. I would vote for it. I would just straight up vote for it, because we all deserve health care. Right now, the senators are getting it, the representatives are getting it, military get it. So many people get it. It's like, I think it's a third of the population already gets health care from the government at some level. And it's not that big of a step to go the rest of the way. And I am fully in favor of going the rest of the way.
Jamie?
Yeah, I have been reading up a lot on direct primary care, which is basically it's removing the government component out of it. I like the idea of universal health care. I think if we started it on a state level, it would be a great thing, as long as there was an option for people to opt out. And as long as maybe it was paid for by maybe decriminalizing victimless crimes or something like that, you know, to shift spending around to cover it, I'm much more comfortable with that idea than, you know, whatever tax that they might want to add on to it. Yeah, I wasn't aware that there was a task force already started, so that's kind of good news. Do they have a website?
Yes, there's a link where you can actually watch all the task force sessions monthly. I can email that to everybody on this call.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I yield my time.
Okay, did you have something else at the county level, Kayla? Okay, well, why don't we, let's do one more round of moderator questions unless you see anything else come in from the audience from the chat. So for another question for the county commissioner level, because she's been left out for a while. Ashley, what can we do at the county level to address the health, social, and fiscal impacts of the current corona pandemic and economic downturn? Real small question for 2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned before, you know, we have to have leadership at the county level that believes in science, wants to follow public health advice and the advice of the public health experts as well as the epidemiologists. And that's something I would do. I would model good behavior. I wouldn't be having events with lots of unmasked people indoors, which is something my opponent's been doing. I think we have to focus on getting communities that have been disproportionately impacted the personal protective equipment they need. When there's an outbreak, there has to be appropriate contact tracing. We have to take this seriously. The cases are going up and up. Just the other day, we had our second highest day since the pandemic began in Marion County. And really, for me, this all ties into, you know, the day-to-day of everyone's lives. Like, we are not going to get our schools back open, and we are not going to get businesses operating fully and people, you know, fully back to work until we address the pandemic. And if you can utilize the public health practices and model them and implement them effectively and make sure all the materials are in multiple languages and everyone has the equipment they need, then we would start to see the numbers go down. You know, if you look at what New Zealand has done, you know, that's what they did. Close down, follow guidance. And look, you know, my two nephews are there. They're back in school. They've been back in school for months. Yet our parents, myself, you know, I'm working full-time campaigning and trying to homeschool my kids, and I'm fortunate. We have so many in our county that don't have internet. Your children learning right now, and how are they working remotely if they don't have broadband? So we have to take the public health guidance seriously and enforce it, and then we can get our businesses back open. I also think we need to do another round of grant funding for small businesses that have continuously employed people, and make sure that they're going towards businesses that are owned by folks in our BIPOC communities, and that we are supporting them to keep their doors open. I see my orange card. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. All right.
You see me like moving around. I'm putting labels on postcards. I'm listening and multitasking. So it's go time for postcards.
Awesome. Okay, so this is for our county clerks. Looks like Danielle's got some postcards there too. All right. When it goes, how are the ballot drop box currently secured, and what methods have you implemented to secure them, and what is the proven success of your methods? So, gosh, I forget who we started with last time. I think we started with Danielle, so I'm going to go with Bill this time.
Okay, thank you. My wife is bringing the power cord so that I don't go off in the middle of this. So to keep our boxes secure, one thing is location. We've got, we're very deliberative on where we put the ballot drop sites to begin with. Traditionally, it's been in city halls, because when they're in city halls, we also have the authority to not allow electioneering within 100 feet of any entrance to that particular city hall. But we try to put them in places indoors where they're going to be in somebody's view at all times. We look for things to fasten them to. We'll cable them, do whatever we need to make them a little harder for anybody to walk off with. I guess you asked for our record. Well, nobody's broken into or stolen a box in the 16 years that I've been involved here, and I'm not sure about, I think that precedes me. But that's sort of a fingers crossed type of thing, because if anybody really wants to get something, you know, they can do it. Our outdoor sites, we use a special type of box, 1/4-inch steel, that's been designed especially for elections to make it harder for somebody to pour a drink in, make it harder for somebody to set a fire in that would continue, and make it also ADA accessible, so you can put the ballot in with just one hand. We have to be careful about these sites too, where we put these. And we will be having 3 more sites coming online early this week in the cities of Jefferson, Turner, and Hubbard will have them. Staten just got one last week. And so this is going to make it so much, that's especially for the people at the Canyon's going to make it more convenient for them, a 24/7 box instead of one that's based on the hours. Oh, whoops, I'm sorry, right. I see the orange.
Yeah, there's the orange. All right, one follow-up, and Danielle, I'll ask you this too, but it's just, how often are they checked, those boxes?
Right now, and for this election, most all of them are checked at least daily, sometimes twice that much or more, depending on the situation. The call that I was just on in the middle of this meeting was another report from the field, because they were bringing boxes in today, and we're getting a great turnout of ballots. We don't publish the exact time we're going to be there for obvious reasons. But rest assured that we're checking those boxes very regularly.
All right, thank you, Bill. And now to Danielle. Again, the question is, how are ballot drop boxes currently secured? What methods are implemented to secure them? And what is the proven success of the methods? And then how often?
Yeah, so I'm going to say I'm kind of surprised that some of those boxes aren't already in place, considering the time for ballot drops are happening. But you know, there are ballot drop boxes also in grocery stores and in banks, say Roths and some of the U.S. bank locations, that some of them, because the other ones were closed during the pandemic in the May 2020 primary election, some of those city halls weren't open. So for a lot of people out, especially out in those rural communities, the equity of being able to drop their ballots off is not always there. So I'm glad to hear that I believe Silverton received one, or Staten received one recently. Good to hear that Jefferson will get those in the future. But to me, it seems to me that if we are going to say that there is an equitable service, that people shouldn't have to drive 40 miles or more to drop their ballots. For the security, one of the things I actually noticed, and again, this is coming from my Texas brain, right? That when I'm seeing something that seems unsecured, you know, really when I first moved here, I was surprised that the election boxes were really no more than say a plastic container with a zip tie. I'm glad that they're hardening those up. I think it's a little overdue, and so I'm really glad to hear that moving forward.
Great. Okay. Well, we've gone a little over how long we thought we might go with a smaller number of candidates. So I think we'll close it up with our last arguments. What we'd like to do is have each of you give us 2 minutes on, again, why you're the best candidate for the position you're running for and why and how people could vote for you. Let's start again from the senatorial level and work our way down. So Jim?
Yeah, I would love to have your vote. I look forward to representing you and working with climate change. We don't get to fix climate change all by ourselves, but we need to own our part in climate change and do what we need to do. In terms of living wages, I believe one job should be enough. We should be able to have one job, be able to go home to our families and enjoy a decent life. These are things that I'm going to be working for. Campaign finance reform. Corporations don't get to vote. What are they doing in our election process? They don't belong there. They shouldn't be throwing money at us. This is about the people and not corporations. And that needs to shift. And also in terms of the financing. I mean, that's crazy. In education, I would love to get vocational training back in school. Forever ago, when I was in high school, there was vocational training and students went out to job sites to learn things, to learn skills. And that ability to have a skill when you come out of high school is precious. It will allow a student, if they want to go into the workforce and work, it'll allow them to do that, to at least start that. If they want to go to college, they can get a better job to help work their way through colleges, because colleges are way too expensive. And we need to be able to promote that in our system of getting students ready for the world in a time that fits them, instead of doing everybody needs a 4-year degree. It's not true, and it's never been true. Vocational training and community colleges are amazing places to get an education, to get a skill, and do it. In Europe, they do 4-year apprentice programs, and there it is. So I would appreciate your vote so I could get the work done. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. Jamie?
Yeah, I will take this opportunity to go back to what I was answering before when I went overtime. Criminal justice system. I would end cash bail and solitary confinement, because I see these as a violation of our 8th Amendment rights. They have no therapeutic use, and they really just make it, it skews the justice system against the poor, as far as the cash bail system goes, but they're both contained in the 8th Amendment. Yeah, campaign finance. Oregon had passed a bill in 2006, Measure 47, and it was to do just that, to limit private contributions into campaigns. The Secretary of State, Bill Bradbury, read it as interpreting it as money is speech, and until we amend Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon State Constitution, we can't do much. However, I do want to shift to a publicly funded campaign. It is the most democratic way of doing it. This would mean no PACs, no unions, no corporations, no parties, no, there's no private money at all. And it is the only way to get a democracy that works for the people. But yeah, basically amending the Constitution to say that money doesn't equal speech, because if it did, all tax laws would be an infringement on our First Amendment rights, so it doesn't make any sense. I think it's just something that politicians did so that they could stay in power, and it's time to eliminate it. And then, let's see. I have a fringe idea for criminal justice reform. I don't know if it would ever fly, but I would like to see an opt-in program for inmates that was based off Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent, introspective meditation technique where you're not allowed to communicate. Orange card, got it. Well, I almost got there. Thank you.
Ashley?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having this forum. I really enjoyed doing this in May as well, and it's great to see some of the same faces and hear from some of the same candidates, but get to know new ones. I haven't gotten a chance to hear from Jamie before, so go fight win. So I will just come back to, I think people in Marion County are struggling. I think that we all deserve a life of good health, independence, and economic prosperity. And I think that we need leaders in county government and everywhere who believe that facts and science matter, who will focus on the public health best practices to end the pandemic, who want to truly tackle the homelessness crisis and help our unsheltered population. And we need to elect people who believe and acknowledge that systemic and structural racism are here, they're real, and that we need to have leaders who genuinely want to tackle the issues for the people that live here. Unfortunately, right now, the opposite is what we have on our county commission. And that's why I'm running. I'm the candidate in this race that has a solid government background. I have run large multi-billion-dollar programs that impact people's day-to-day lives. Their most basic needs was where that money was going toward. And I have strong relationships with local leaders, legislators, our congressional delegation. And so I think that I can lead us through this really difficult time and ensure that people will be able to thrive and that people will be heard within their county government. When I see something wrong around me in my community, I can't sit idly by. I have to act. And I want to advocate for the people that need that advocacy right now in Marion County. So I hope you will vote for me, Ashley Carson Cottingham. You've probably already received your ballot. Turn it in right away. You can learn more about me on my website, ashleyfororegon.com, with the number 4 in the middle. Thank you.
Great, Ashley. Thank you. And let's hear from Danielle Gonzalez.
You're muted, Danielle.
Thank you. Okay, so I will say this, public leaders, we don't have all the answers, and I certainly won't either. We constantly have to listen and reflect and learn and then take action to represent that broader community for where we're going to serve. And this is something I absolutely vow to all of you, and that's my experience over my professional career. County clerks are at the front lines protecting the democratic process, and not just today, but definitely for the future. And by far the biggest threat to our elections is disinformation. And these actors are getting to do it because they have the means, motive, and opportunity to insert themselves into our public discourse. And this is why I think candidate forums like this are super important. Now, I think that I bring a fresh perspective. I have some serious conviction. I have been known to have a lot of courage in my work and tenacity, and I'm willing to work hard. And I want to make sure that I'm ensuring that election integrity is not just from the day you get your ballot, but way before that. My opponent, Bill, he's a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. He is absolutely a nice guy, and we just differ on the pathways and the leadership styles for what I think is going to be necessary in the futures ahead, because these are unique times. And this requires us to kind of go beyond the outdated public service models that have maybe served fine for the last 20 years. But we need to elect forward thinkers that can face the challenges with clear eyes and tenacity, and someone like me that has earned the trust of people from all political stripes. So thank you again. I encourage you to vote all the way down the ballot to the county clerk race and elect Danielle Gonzalez for Marion County Clerk. And my website is www.votedaniellegonzalez with 2 Z's.com. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Danielle. And Bill Burgess is going to have the last word, and then he'll start counting our ballots. Bill? Unmute, Bill, unmute.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having this forum. The last forum with the Silverton Grange I was involved in was the Martin Luther King celebration before we had to do everything all technical. There are quite a few things to say. Of course, I believe I'm the best candidate. I certainly bring the passion. I believe I am forward thinking. And I think I'm very tenacious also, because that's what it takes to get a lot of this stuff done. A lot of behind the scenes stories that aren't fit for publication on how we have to fight to get things done. I do want to clear up a possible misconception you may have had a picture about ballot boxes. Let me assure you that every ballot box that's out there, that's been out there since I've been there, has used a substantial padlock on it and had steelized under security or I guess tempering or toughening of those plastic looking boxes. Nothing was dependent on merely just a tie or anything like that. I think it's really important for this election that we all vote early. And here's the reason why. We're dealing with a pandemic. We dealt with a fire. We're still dealing with a fire for maybe a few more years now of those fires. And by the way, Danielle has done a good job and has continued to do a good job to help the people up the canyon with both the wireless and with the sewer stuff that are so needed to make that work for the future. But with COVID, we're not sure when maybe our USPS may be drawn down, or our own staff are drawn down, or you as a voter are not able to get your ballot in. So don't wait, get it in now. We've been so fortunate because we had expected, I mean, all along we had to have secondary plans if our inserters, if our printers, if all these other people weren't able to do the things needed. And luckily we were. So don't wait. Not only do you get off the call list by calling, by voting now, but you assure that you get that ballot to us so we can count it. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Bill. Go ahead.
Okay, and please check out my website. Really proud of it. The folks have done a great job on it. A lot of testimonials on it. www.electbillburgess.com. Thank you.
All right, so I'll turn it over to Kayla. Thanks to all the candidates for being here. Kayla, you want to say the last words for the Grange?
Sure, I was just going to say that I put all the websites that were referenced today in the chat. So if you are interested in learning more, and candidates, make sure I got your website right. I think I got them there. And if I didn't put that, please put your correct website in the chat so we can reference it. So thank you everybody for coming. I'll just reiterate, get your ballots in, and we are just excited to have the candidates here for this discussion and also our citizens from the community. Thank you for being empowered, for listening, and for voting, because we all have a voice and that voice matters. So on behalf of the Grange and Silverton, thank you all for joining us.